That was the defining moment of any young person's life. You pass QUC, and life will smile at you. Failed, and things could go downhill from there on, unless you persevere. Wayne said his father was probably worried that he was not showing enough diligence with his study, so called him one night and had him sat across the table, and then the father asked him, "Do you know Percy?" Apparently there was a man named Percy at the church, so Wayne enthusiastically said, "Percy at church? Yeah, I know him. Is Percy all right?" His father smiled and slowly told him, No, not that Percy. I'm talking about perseverance. Get to know him. Wayne quickly got the message, the promises for them. He would do well in school C, and he did. He passed to university entrance the following year, went on to university. He did a stint with the police force, spent some time with the defense, I think was probably Air Force, and then went on to earn a master in theology from Oxford. He's still a minister in the Presbyterian Church in New Zealand. It's about the same age. We went to university together. As Lee shared with the story, the children, our reading is actually about perseverance. Because think about wrestling a person the whole night. So this is a story about perseverance, and of course many other ideas and themes. Jacob spent 20 years in Haran with his uncle Laban, 20 years. So 14 years to get the 2 wives, and probably 6 years to get used to the place, and probably did other things. But the Bible says 20 years. He's now on his way home, but fearful that Esau might still be angry with him. He sent servants ahead with gifts for Esau, and he stays behind with his family, the wives and the maids and the children. On that night, they were at the river Yapok or Jacob. This is the one over here. It's a tributary of the Jordan over here. And it was here where they were. So when night descends, he took his wife and children to the side of the Yapok. And he went back to the other side and stayed there by himself. And when night falls, the man jumps on him and wrestles him the whole night. When the man realizes that he cannot overcome Jacob, he strikes Jacob on the hip socket, and his joint was put out of joint. The man then begged Jacob to let him go, but Jacob would not let him go unless he has blessed Jacob. The man asked him, "What's your name?" And he says, "Jacob." And then he said, "You will no longer be known as Jacob, but you will know as Israel." Israel means struggle, El means God, or strive, so strive, Israel, and El is the word for God. Put together, it means Israel, you've been striving with God. Because you have been striving with God and with humans, and you have prevailed. Interestingly, it's only then that Jacob found out this is God that's been wrestling. And reminds us when he first left on his first night in Bethel, he did not know God was there. And he's returning home, And this is happening again. He's been wrestling this man the whole night and did not know it was God. If you think about this, as I said, this is a story of endurance. Story of patience, persistence, and of course, perseverance. We can presume that the night was a summer night because you would not expect the family to be going south to the cold during the winter. So it was a shorter night. Good for Jacob, not a long night in the middle of winter. But still, wrestling is an exhausting sport. Wrestling for a few minutes will tire you out. So think about wrestling maybe for 6 hours when they were supposed to be sleeping. I imagine all the energy that was left with them is the energy to breathe. This story tells us a lot about the character of Jacob. He was a fighter. He persevered against the demands and struggles of life. And we know this was not the first time that Jacob has wrestled with others and with his circumstances. In that he had been wrestling with people even before he was born, wrestling with his brother Esau in mother's womb. Because God clearly called him before he was born to be the bearer of the promise. And then God threw a spanner into the process by having him born after Esau. And the culture of that place is the firstborn who would inherit much of the wealth of the family in addition to the promise. So he wrestled with that situation. And with the help of his mother and the help of his father, because if you think about it, Isaac was also part of this. And even Esau, because Esau also was part of this, the process that allowed him to get to, the first birthright. He won. He got it. And then he was sent to exile in Haran. Even though it's the country or the place of his ancestors, it was foreign to him. And he would have struggled with all the issues that migrants face when they move to their new country and homes. When Laban played a trick on him on his first wedding night, giving him Leah instead of Rachel, he thought was promised to him, he did not give in. He agreed to serve another 7 years until he got the woman that he loved. And now he's returning home, presumably to start a role of the family patriarch. And after wrestling with people all his life, up to now, he's now wrestling with God as he readies to take up the responsibility as the bearer of God's promise. And he's given an appropriate, what we call in Samoa, Matai title. It's called Israel, a person who has striven with people and with God and has prevailed. Now, as Lee has shared with the boys and with us, life is not easy. We all know that. There are external forces, things that other people do to make it very difficult for us to succeed or to enjoy life. And they can include discriminating government education and employment policies, discriminating recruiting policies, and discriminating cultural practices, whether it be at home or society. The second source of obstacles are internal. These are the things within us that make us think it's impossible or very difficult to go on or to become functional and be useful to us, our family, and society. And those obstacles could be mental or physical, maybe a disability, physical disability, or a mental disability. And when we look at Jacob, he encountered all of these external forces, impediments, and internal impediments. There were cultural practices that were against him, like being born second after Esau. There was a culture in Haran. He thought that he could marry whoever he wanted, but the culture of Haran, he cannot. He has to marry the older daughters have to be married first. And even nowadays, that culture is still practiced in some countries. I remember when I asked Grace's parents for us to be married, they were laughing because Grace's younger sister got married ahead of her. And apparently there were some issues when the younger sister got married ahead of her. So the family were very happy that I asked them for the hand of Grace, because they thought that Grace was not going to be married, but there she was. And this was the culture also that Jacob was facing in Haran. So external impediments because of cultural practices, discriminating cultural practices. But there were also internal forces that were probably could have worked against him. You can clearly see he was fearful. He was fearful. He was afraid of strangers. And he was also afraid of God. That first night in Bethel, he was afraid of God. But it's the things that he feared most was the possibility that Esau was still angry with him. But he did not allow those fears to paralyze him. Instead, he was proactive and creative, like sending the servants with gifts for Esau. And moreover, he never let an opportunity to gain go, like extracting a blessing from God after he prevailed in their wrestling match. That's part of being smart, how to survive, part of perseverance, seizing the opportunity, seeing opportunities where people say there is nothing there. What about us? What about you? Have you encountered external obstacles in your pursuit of success, joy, and peace? Are there internal obstacles that's stopping you from enjoying life? I almost came into my aging body because I thought, oh, I cannot bend down, I cannot garden, which I enjoy. But I went searching for a way to overcome those pains, and I tell you, I'm enjoying life, really enjoying life. Do you know perseverance? Jacob is our model when we face obstacles in life, whether they be external or internal. I just finished reading a PhD thesis by a young Samoan theologian who grew up in Aotearoa, New Zealand. His name is Imoa Maua Sesefano. The thesis is a reflection on how to define a Samoan minister in New Zealand, particularly in the Congregational Christian Church of Samoa, the bigger denomination in Samoa. He shared in this thesis that he was diagnosed with a mental condition when he was a teenager, 17 years old. It's a diagnosis that could easily send him down, become a useless vegetable. Not just a vegetable, but no one could eat it. Instead, the diagnosed, he had a call to become a minister to people with mental health and to teach people about mental health. Amazingly, he succeeded. So he went and enrolled in Malua Theological College, the theological college of the Congregational Church, and went on to finish a PhD in theology in Auckland University. He taught in Malua for a while, but now back in New Zealand, teaching in the theological college there, and also working for the government on mental health. That is persevering against an internal obstacle. In multicultural societies like Australia, the external obstacles that most people face, particularly people from minorities, are external. The dominant culture usually controls the agenda, as we know. And if members of the dominant culture are kind, they can create opportunities for the minorities to thrive. And that will be great for the country and everyone. But if members of the dominant cultures are mean, they will always find a way to impede the progress of minority people. Still, those in minority who persevere and have belief in God, they will always find a way to circumvent obstacles that systems and people have put in their ways, and they will eventually succeed. And education has become a main factor in the success of minorities, and those who have used education have prevailed. So never give up. Stick to the fight, because you will get there. Now, the interesting thing is that you can look anywhere. You can look at people and country, but you will not find a people who are master of perseverance than the Jews. 2,000 years in exile, spread all over the world after the war in 135, when Rome destroyed Jerusalem. They were not allowed to stay in the Holy Land, so they spread all over, 2,000 years. And when 948, they returned and established a nation for themselves. But this is the interesting thing. They are Jews from the tribe of Judah. But instead of calling this new nation Judah or Judea, they call it Israel. Israel. And it is the most appropriate name for them as a nation. Not as Jews, but as Israel. Because they have striven with people for 2,000 years and with God for 2,000 years, and they have prevailed. Perseverance, that is English for Israel. It means never give up. It means never quit. It means never look for excuses for failure, to justify failure. It means trust in God to lead you out of the mire where you may have found yourself into dry land to open field where you can realize your full potential. Let me finish with this poem that has been the guide in my journey with perseverance and belief in God since I was 19, I think. Don't quit. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when funds are low and debts are high, and where you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many a failure chance about when they might have won had they struck it out. Don't give up though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Often the goal is nearer than it seems to a faint and faltering man. Often the struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup. And he learned too late when the night came down how close he was to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint in the clouds of doubt. And you never can tell how close you are. It may be nearer when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things seem worst that you must not quit. Yes, those who persevere against the struggles and the demands of life with God will prevail. For the glory of God, amen. Let us rise as we sing our next hymn. Of faith.